Good evening and hello, everybody. My name is Stan Baines, and I'm your chair of this session and a steering committee member of the Canadian Network for Imagination and Creativity, or CNIC for short. My fellow friends in imagination and in our steering committee with us this evening are scattered about on your Zoom screen. So if you could, my friends, please give us a wave to let everybody know where you are. There we go. We have made it to the end of our year, but we are excited once again to be back in this hour-long gathering place and share with you our different topics from our host guests from time to time, and then the discussions that happen with you afterwards. CNIC's goal is to create and foster open, forward-thinking dialogue as we look at things from different perspectives, look to find new ideas, see creativity and imagination from different backgrounds and angles, ask questions, and explore our inner innovation. It is our hope to expand our minds in new directions, collaborate through idea sharing, create partnerships in our differences, in our sameness, and in our beliefs. Let us find creativity through the exploration of our imaginations and ideas. I would like to acknowledge at this time that as a resident of Clarence Rockland, Ontario, which sits just outside of the east end of the city of Ottawa in Ontario, Canada, that I'm chairing our meeting on traditional unceded land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe territory and people. With new eyes, we see the sorrow of where we were. With a new heart, we heal and know where we are. With a lifted soul, we will be sharing tomorrow together. This is our space to learn, explore, and share. We want you to do that in your way to make this space your own. Not only do we want to hear your ideas and thoughts, but listening is equally as important. Reflect and participate in your way. Our format is very simple. Once our hosts guide our discussion for this evening, we will open the floor for our chats and conversations to begin and see where our journey will lead us during our time together. Zoom obviously is our platform of choice, so Zoom allows you to participate in many different ways. It has built-in controls that allow you to raise your hand so we can see where you are when you wish to join in the chat. And as mentioned before, you can add things to our chat function, which helps keep the ideas and thoughts flowing. Share your ideas your way and join in the jam. You are always so patient with me, and thank you for letting me run through that. So let's get down to our jam. For tonight, we will be guided by Ming-Yu Lin. We will be talking about When the Ugliness Sing. Ming-Yu, it is all yours.
Thank you, Stan. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Ming-Yu Lin from Coquitlam, BC. I'm a pianist, a piano teacher, and also a PhD candidate at Simon Fraser University. My research focuses on embedding improvisation in classical music training and listening and sounds. So I'm going to invite you to listen first today. I recorded an improvisation when I practiced the piano a couple of days ago, and I think this sound clip could be a good opening sound for today's discussion. So I'll share my recording now. This is not a long piece, and I hope you enjoy it. It's not a screen sharing, it's just sound. Okay, this is the thing. Okay, thank you for listening. So as you heard, I started this improvisation from some dissonant sounds. And those sharp and conflicting sounds in the beginning made me feel uncomfortable, actually. Those were ugly sounds for me and were what I tended to avoid before. But you could hear the tension resolved in the music, the sounds opening up and reaching resolution in some points. When I kept moving my fingers step up and down, the sound led to its own balance. And when I listened to the recording after I played this piece, I found those ugly sounds were actually not as annoying as I imagined. So, in arts or life, beauty usually indicates harmonious or balanced sounds or shapes, colors, situations, feelings, etc. And beauty is usually what we pursue. We all enjoy and love happy, beautiful times, but unavoidable people sometimes suffer when bad things happen. Those ugly, discomfortable, unpleasant, or discordant things. I started today's discussion from a piece of improvisational music, but I'm not going to focus on artistic taste today. The thought I want to bring up from the musical piece is when we appreciate an artwork, a piece of music, a painting, we may find ugliness and beauty could be transformed. And I want to extend this discussion to the ugly moments, those dark times happening in our lives, short or long. Those conflicts, interruptions, rejections, crises, or struggles, and how we listen when we encounter ugliness and transform ugliness with creativity and imagination. So I'm going to share my stories first. I started to reflect on the role of ugliness when I do my research in improvisation. I was a perfectionist. Now, most of unexpected incidents made me uncomfortable. Those were ugliness for me, anything out of my plans. Like my students say no when I invite them to improvise in a class, or and especially those wrong things. For example, a mistake or a missing note on the stage, or an accidental discordant chord when I improvise. So improvisation was hard for me in the beginning because it is full of risks and unpredictabilities and does not offer a guarantee of beauty. But when I improvise on the piano, I found if I want to continue my improvisation, I have to deal with those unexpected ugly sounds, because when I had no printed music in front of me, when I could only trust my fingers to move on, unwanted sound happened, and I spent time to learn and accept and deal with them. So I found that when I introduced improvisation to my students, some children had the same obstacle, especially those young beginners who may play very, classical pieces such as Mozart, Beethoven, or Haydn as the main learning materials in the early phase. They have little experience of atonal music and are familiar with harmonious sound. So they would naturally tend to avoid dissonant sound when they improvise, but they don't have enough skills or knowledge to keep their creation in a way and a style they are familiar with. So they would just reject it. They say no. Those students didn't want to try improvisation because they were afraid of mistakes. They were afraid of those ugly dissonant sound. They felt uncomfortable with those inharmonious chords or unenjoyable melodies. And I found that they were also afraid of those moments of not knowing what to do. Those moments make them feel embarrassed and anxious, even though I kept telling them that, there is no mistake in improvisation. You can take time to listen, to think. They were just so fearful. So in the early phase of my research to persuade my students, to surrender, to accept, to face possible ugliness, and to initiate an improvisation was a big challenge. And I have a story about one of my students here. That young girl is smart and talented, but she was so afraid of making mistakes. So in our classes, even a single wrong note could upset her. So she kept saying no. She kept rejecting my invitation to improvise. I tried many different ways to guide her to practice, to become familiar with creating music spontaneously. But every time I asked her to create some music by herself, she would think for a while and then say no. Those rejections made both of us frustrated because I tried and I asked almost every week. Week by week, I was rejected. I felt so bad. And I believe that my student didn't feel good either because making a decision to say no needed courage. And one day I suddenly had an idea. I said, hey, Ben, you know what? I need your help. I need an ugly song for my research data. And the title of the song would be The Ugliest Song in the World. So would you please make the worst sound on the piano and create an ugliest song for me? And she was like, what? An ugly song? Are you sure? I said, yes. She said, like, what kind of research are you doing? I said, yes, please play an ugly song for me. So she started to play. I mean, playfully play on the piano, not for making music, but for making bad sounds. She hit the piano keys without any plan or instruction. She used her fingers, fists, knuckles, and palms naturally and successfully made many ugly sounds. Then she started to laugh happily with those random non-musical sounds she created. At that moment, I heard her laughter mixing with those ugly sounds. I realized that ugliness could sing beautifully. And I believe that my student could face ugliness with a different attitude after getting this experience. So after that lesson, I could clearly feel that she became open and relaxed while playing wrong notes in classical pieces, and soon she started to improvise. I believe that that's because she got the chance to know that ugliness is not as scary as she thought. So on the way I explore improvisation, the bravery to accept, to listen to, and to find opportunities from ugliness is one of the most precious things I've learned. And that attitude is the thing I want to share with people and my students. When we confront ugliness, when we are trapped in ugly moments, can we listen carefully and improvise with ugliness and try to transform ugliness? So I'm going to invite you to share your thoughts and experiences of encountering ugliness and how we can guide our students and children to listen to ugliness, to find beauty within ugliness. So I'll open the floor for conversation. Please share your ideas.
Michael, go ahead. You got to unmute.
There, can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm surprised some of you didn't say it was better before. Ming-Yu, first of all, I have to comment on the piece you played. There was an ugly moment in it. There were some wonderful examples of tension and release, but there wasn't a moment of ugliness anywhere. In fact, the tension only amplified the beauty of it, and it made it so three-dimensional. So your example wasn't a very good one to amplify what you wanted to talk about. I've long maintained that we involve ourselves in creative activity essentially for reasons of beauty. The quest we have for change I think is fundamentally based upon our sense that we want to make something better. And often the word better has an aesthetic quality to it. We want to make things more beautiful in the world. We don't naturally want to make things more ugly. And the only difference is our conceptions of what beauty is varies, but that doesn't matter. Um, the purpose of creative activity in general, whether it's the arts or anything else, it seems to me to make the world a better place in some way. And the criteria we use for better are often mixed up with our concepts of beauty. So I love the topic, Ming-Yu, and I love the story you told about encouraging your students to be involved in improvisation. Miles Davis once said that you never know that whether a wrong note's been played until you hear the note afterwards. In other words, there's no such thing as a wrong note until it's placed in a particular context after it's played or sung. And often the tension that may create with the note following leads to a more enhanced beauty, just as in your improvisation that you played. So I think my 2 cents worth here is we all fundamentally don't pursue ugliness. We pursue beauty. And therefore, when we have moments of ugliness in any example, our path through it is to try to turn that ugliness into moments of beauty. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Michael. Gerard.
So, Ming-Yu, there was almost a Philip Glass-esque feel to that piece that you just did. So it was kind of interesting. And the other thing I was thinking of, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, around the idea of fear. Is fear a monster or a muse in the creative process? Because there's almost like this fear of the grotesque. But history is replete, especially within, and I hate to use the term outsider art, but there's a lot would say that the grotesque is found in that area, but there's also other. I'm also thinking of a photographer by the name of Joel Peter Witkin, who worked with a kind of a grotesque aesthetic in his work, and at the same time was referencing, Renaissance paintings, and well worth looking into his work, actually. So I guess it's not so much a question, but a couple of statements around this, and I think that I think the grotesque is just part of the process, whether it's in visual or story or movement, or in your case with sound. So thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Ming-Yu. Sorry.
I just want to say, fear is monster and it's also muse. And that's why I feel like bringing students the first-hand experience of facing and converting ugly moments can cultivate their bravery, especially from arts, through arts. I mean, offering opportunities for students to encounter ugliness through arts is a good way, since it doesn't hurt, right? And the process of transforming could be short. And it's very personal. I mean, beauty and ugly, it's very subjective and personal feelings, but it's a process. It's a transforming process. Yeah, that's my thought.
Fred.
Ming-Yu, I tried to listen, but I found very quickly my brain is going, oh, that must have been so hard for her to do those dissonant chords, and to force yourself away from what you would want to do. And so all of a sudden I started to think, now, what if somebody else walked up and sat down beside you and started to play with you? I wondered about the process. How would they resolve, and would both of them try to create some dissonance, or would both of them then eventually try to resolve? And I was going around and around in those circles trying to think what it would be like for two people to experience, or maybe even three people, doing that same thing and working through the piece. And then my brain went to, was it a tree in Brooklyn or a flower grows in Brooklyn? This idea of a paved city, and there's this flower growing in there. If everything was beautiful, we wouldn't be able to appreciate real beauty. We need the coincidence of opposites in order for the color to come out and to see. And so then I tried to think, other than the fact that I could probably invent the ugliest song, but I try to harmonize every once in a while, and sometimes it's disastrous. But I thought, no, wait a minute, I do this. When I start to write a lament, like a psalm of lament or something like that, where all the ugliness is there and it's consuming me, it's the process of working through it that transforms it into something else. And I find quite often what will happen is community will emerge as a release for it. And I just received a book yesterday from a cousin. It's his third book. And the first book was so difficult because he was processing his brother's death from mental illness and the side effects of that. And it was just painful. It was so hard to read. And then the next one was much more hopeful. And then the third one was him processing the death of his wife of many years through cancer. And in his words, his poetry, we felt like we were there and experienced the whole thing. And so through that ugliness, there was this beauty that emerged because the strength of the relationship and the shared memories and everything else. But at the same point, he wrote in the struggle of watching her waste away. And so I really do think that there's a lot of us that do spend time in writing. But I also know that part of his mental illness, his manic depression, etc., he experiences through art. And art might start very ugly and then resolve into something else. And so it's like when we find that happy place, we might be in a very difficult spot, struggles in life, but if we find that happy spot, we find that transformation that you were talking about. Tell me about when you do try that with 2 or 3 people. I'm very curious how the process will go.
Actually, everything will happen naturally. You listen to each other and you just know where it goes. You know, when we do together, I mean, when we do group improvisation, we I should say we don't intensively to pursue a revolution. We just follow. We just follow the flow, and we know where it goes. Yeah, that's the process.
We don't want to go to some of those places. So that's what I'm talking about. I know I watch a lot of that happening where the improv somebody will just join somebody at a public piano, and next thing you know, beauty's happening. But it's when you've got that, you were deliberately creating dissonance.
Yeah.
That adds an element. I've never seen it practiced.
Actually, we practice. So we know when it arrives, when the ending arrives, we know.
So I got Lindsay, then Jackie, then Dean, then Peter. So Lindsay, go ahead.
Hi there. Yeah, I definitely noticed the discomfort and wanting to move away when the piece started. And I and I love this because I'm looking at inclusive leadership. That's my research area, and specifically connecting with differences. And when we hear something that we don't expect, it's like experiencing something different, and that discomfort. And I'm reading again and again in the literature that, well, just this morning, I was reading the skill of conflict management is not really addressed in the literature on inclusive leadership. And so my intent is to study it through the arts. And like you said, Ming-Yu, that the arts are kind of lower the risk, the stakes, so that we can we can experiment with new thoughts or new ideas, or experiment with discomfort a little more easily, I think. And so I love this idea of bringing the sound, because I was thinking of visual arts, but this is quite immediate, and it might be culturally based as well, because different sounds from different cultures will trigger various degrees of discomfort, I guess. But the thing that I especially paid attention to today was relaxing and settling into it. And that's the skill, I think, in conflict management that we don't raise to its level of importance. The skill of relaxing with differences, relaxing with that discord, relaxing while we're listening to something that at first is so uncomfortable. Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate the soundscape.
Thanks, Lindsay. Jackie.
Great, thank you so much for that demonstration. I would say the thing that came up for me when I was listening to the piece was actually an alignment was happening in my body. And that alignment for me came through the different changes of tone, the different strikes of, it's almost as though it was inviting me to pay attention more to internally. And so I appreciated that. I wanted to share that as a person of Black African descent, we have made art forms out of dissonance. We've made art forms out of whether it's jazz, blues, hip hop beats. We have used this particular medium to experience freedom. We have used this medium to dance in spaces where we're not allowed to dance and take back permission for ourselves, to tell stories and to use fear as a motivator to give ourselves permission to simply be. And so I tend to call this particular part of my conditioning, being in several worlds at the same time, the tyranny of one way of being. And I resist that as much as possible, because I know there's another way that the music and the storytelling has given me access to be able to experience freedom in so many different ways. So thank you for that experience.
Dean.
A couple of things. First, Michael knows that my background is psychology. I teach psychology at the university level. And what I'm hearing, that's my background. So first thing, Ming-Yu, that was a brilliant strategy or tactic or exercise to reconfigure how someone saw an activity, a problem. It went from being, you cannot do this because it is wrong, to this is the goal, which actually allowed the individual to approach something that otherwise they had been trained to avoid at all costs. Perfectionism leads us along one path and doesn't allow for the exploration of other possibilities. So that's one statement that I went, yep, that as a teacher, I am impressed with the sidestep of definition and redefining the context. So that was one. Two, I know that, so there'll be a third element. I know that pattern recognition makes things that are unusual and usually wrong acceptable. So if we can repeat, eventually the discord becomes expected and easier to listen to, and becomes part of the overall pattern or piece of music. And how to bring that into human beings. My lovely life partner taught in a school wherein one child, elementary school, the face was completely disfigured. And I'll leave it at the description at that level. That child went to this one school for years, and every kid in that school knew that child by the first name. That was it. There was no teasing. There was no exclusion. That child was part of the community and accepted as is. Again, part of the pattern recognition from my perspective. The father came in one day and said, sadly, good news, I got a new job somewhere with a lot of money, and we'll be able to buy a house, et cetera, et cetera. Bad news, we have to leave the school. Half a year later, the father came back and was in tears. Their child did not want to go to school. The child was not accepted, teased, excluded. Part of that whole pattern recognition. What is normal? What is healthy? What is right? Compared to what's unhealthy, what is wrong. And one of the things that your deliberate movement towards trying to create something that is on the traditionally wrong side is that it allows something to be accepted that was not accepted before. So congratulations to you and your foresight.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. And actually, the idea was from the frame. I found my students always stuck in the frame of correction, right things, doing good things, being a good student. Especially in the classical music training, we ask for like precise, playing everything precisely and correctly, right? So I just have that idea. I should mix the things. I should lift the frame, but I still give them the frame, but that frame is different. Do the wrong thing. That's the new frame, new rule. That's my idea.
Peter.
Wow. Luke, you captured me from the beginning. The piece of music, first of all, just on the way you technically created the dissonance by putting your foot on the sustain pedal to emphasize those dissonances in the original chords was so beautifully done. And I wondered where we were going with this tonight. How's this going to connect? Now it connects in my mind. You've got a brilliant mind. Good Lord. I have so much respect for you. The first thing that came to my mind was a guy called Ilya Prigogine, who won the Pulitzer Prize for physics back in the 80s for a book called Order Out of Chaos. That's what kept coming to my mind. Because the dissonances and something like Michael, I didn't find it ugly, but I found it and I think this is where I'm going to come to my second point. It was disconcerting. It was a little hard to deal with. But then, as you kept going, and I kept waiting for the resolution, which eventually came, it reminded myself of my journey in leadership and some of the most profoundly difficult situations I had to deal with. And there's one that came to my mind, which I'm not going to describe now. But it started off with a dissonance, which was way more dissonant than your beginning. But I learned from that experience and others to say to people in the future with similar, people shouting at me down phones and in anguish and sometimes grieving for what their kids were going through in school. And what I learned to say when I had more maturity and more courage, I would listen to them, and sometimes just for half an hour. And sometimes they say, "Are you still there?" "Yeah, I'm still here. I want to make sure you've said everything so I understand." And I learned, and it was not an easy lesson to say to them, "Look, I don't know where this is going because this is a complex and horrible situation. But if you invest some trust in me and also the support systems we can put in place, this is going to a better place. So what you just did for me is to provide a metaphor, a musical metaphor of that journey. And with your permission, when I do leadership workshops in the future, I would like to show that as an absolutely brilliant metaphor for that journey. It was stunning. Thank you.
I wanted to add to echo everything that's been said. So I had the opportunity before the meeting starts, of course, to test with Ming-Yu to make sure everything is going well and that the sounds will work. So I've listened to that piece, the opening part of that piece twice this evening, and both times I found it very jarring. So piano music to me has the ability to either fill a very small space and be warm, or it can echo through an empty valley and feel very haunting and cold. Well, that piece I found what was jarring and arresting when it started. It was like a weight. So as I listened to it in the testing, it's like it took everything in me to try not to make a face that it was awful. But it wasn't that it was awful. It was that my ear could picture a dark castle in an empty valley, and that noise was just shrill through there. But as that piece moved through, it warmed up, and it's like it brought order out of the chaos to where it started. So it was that painting or that vision of the ugliness to go, but this is still music. So I had to reconcile with myself that although it wasn't music my ear wanted to hear, it was still music. So that as the song went on, there was a comfort that settled into that, so that as we're looking at the topic this evening of when ugliness sings, it's that it was singing the whole time. There was always music, but that once you shift your position from where this is awful or this is off-putting or this is wrong or this doesn't make sense, to listen to the logic and let the flow go through you, then all of a sudden that beginning noise stopped being a problem and started becoming part of the bigger beauty. So thank you, Ming-Yu, for that. That was a really interesting way to do that. Anyone else?
Hi, Sylvia here.
Go ahead, Sylvia.
I've had trouble with Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. I have contended over all my years that it's an ugly painting. But like you said, you just get used to it and then it doesn't hurt so much. That's it. I won't belabor the fact.
Thank you, everyone. And something just popped up. When I teach my student music theory about non-chord notes, this is the same thing. I mean, always happening. Like every time I teach them passing note. Passing note means if we are moving from from a resonant sound. If I move, start on a resonant sound. If I move my fingers down and down and down, steps down and down and down, or up and up to the next resonant sound, we have to pass by some dissonant sound. And we call those sound passing notes. So every time I teach my student passing notes, they will stop on that passing note, hold the note, and ask me, did I play a wrong note? I say, no, just keep going. And I hear how it goes. They hear resolution, they hear the sound, the tension resolved. So yeah, they learned. The more I teach my students, the more I found that classical music, in the beginning, I thought classical music gave us so many rules and frames, but eventually I found classical music actually teach us so many freedom if I know where those freedoms are in those frames.
I have a question. When you're finding yourself in that place of trying to be creative or trying to let go of the rules, as you've been experimenting and now teaching with your students, how much easier do you find that to do now, or do you still find that you will naturally be more inclined to want it to be in order and less in chaos?
I always say that I'm kind of person who have very strong will to share something I want to share. If I want to let my student know this is what you need to know, I'll find very, very different way and many different ways to let them know, because students are different, right? So for some students, you can tell them like in this way, but for the others, you might need to find the other way. And just like Michael said, we pursue beauty. Naturally, we want to avoid ugliness. And if I can't make it, it's ugliness for me. So I want to find the other way to do it, to make it. That's, yeah. It's my motivation. Michael, you have something to say?
Yes, Ming-Yu, I have to ask you, how do you feel now listening to that music that you improvised a few days ago? How do you feel listening to it now?
It's beautiful now. Even in the beginning, even for those dissonant sound, I feel make me feel uncomfortable in the beginning. Those are all beautiful now.
Very interesting.
Yeah, because that piece for me is a whole image now, and there is balance in that image, in that soundscape.
And yet at the time you made it all up. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
So now with that, do you find now that you've heard that like probably multiple times, does it paint a picture for you? Like, do you see a story in that? Right. So as I listened to it, the visions were changing in my mind to create that, maybe just how I see it. But as you listen to that more and more, the same way you would, a written classical piece of music or, modern day music, do you feel a connection to it in a way where this is telling a story, or is it just something that you've done? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. For me, it's different. Like when I listen to different pieces, there are different things. For example, this one, not a story for me, but many different colors. and I can feel my heart like go. I would say it's tight or loose or relaxed with the music, with the sound. Yeah, and colors, like in the beginning, it's a it's not dark. I would say it's a very sharp, too bright for me. A sharp color, and then go smooth green and blue colors in the middle part, and then it goes down. Even the sound are going higher in the end. It's very personal. I believe everyone has different imagination about the music.
Any other thoughts as we look across the screen? Natasha.
I'm just sort of thinking, I'm curious to see what potential feelings and responses would have been without the preamble, without the title of tonight's idea jam. So we were sort of looking for the beauty in the ugliness. And I wonder if you presented it as, you know, this is my perfect piece sort of thing, if the response would have been the same. Just a thought.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, before I played that improvisational piece, I told myself I may need to play, like, do a live performance in this idea jam. So I have to practice to improvise a piece from a dissonant sound. That's what in the beginning, because yeah, I set up this title a long time ago. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, that's a really nifty perspective, because yeah, I think I agree. What would have happened if we would have heard that without anything, to see whether or not we would have said, oh, well, that was beautiful, or been immediately going, hey, Ming-Yu, what's going on, right? Like, we've heard you before, what's happening here, right? But what an interesting way to kind of go into that, right? And what a perspective change. Lindsay.
Pardon me. Yeah, it reminds me of a time that I did go to a concert at an art gallery, the Greater Victoria Art Gallery, and there was an experimental. Is the only word I can remember, and it was over 15 years ago. But the sound. So we were all sitting in rows in a kind of concert, you know, nicely in this room, packed in, and facing the musician who had electronic instruments, and he was creating a sound that was kind of like over and over again, and it went on, and I wasn't just uncomfortable. I became really angry, because after 10 minutes of the sound, and I was surprised that I looked around the room and it didn't seem like anybody else was angry. And so there was dissonance in that. Like, how could we all be sitting there listening to this for 15 minutes? And is he toying with us? And that just got me mad, enraged. And I thought, what if I got up and left? And I felt like I was trapped, like I was nailed to the seat. I had to conform. It did feel like an injustice, a great injustice, and it was not what I expected. And it was like an assault. It was an assault. So I think context is really helpful. Could have been a riot.
Oh, thanks, Lindsay. That was good. Well, Ming-Yu, I'll leave the last thoughts to you before we close out for the evening.
I want to say thank you for everyone. You inspired me a lot. From ugliness and beauty, and with your different perspective and your stories. Yeah. So please joining us. Please join us. Keep joining us.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Ming-Yu. Right. There's something like I said to you at the very beginning before everybody got on. I always like when we end our kind of season with you, because I know it's going to be something musical and you never fail to disappoint with what creative thing you're going to come in here with. So thank you very much for that. And thank all of you for joining into our discussion this evening and for making it through to the very end. We want you to know that Scenic is, of course, socially connected, so please check out our website at check out this long one, www.canadiannetworkforimaginationandcreativity.com. One long run-on word. We can also be found on Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. So find us online for more information, links to register for Idea Jams coming up in the future. For bios, view our past Idea Jam sessions in the chats, and other helpful information about what's coming up. We wanted to extend a giant thank you to all of you who were able to attend our Odyssey of Creativity last month. It was great to be able to meet so many people in person, and it was a great 2 days of learning, interacting, and being energized by the creativity that surrounds us. We can't wait for what comes next, and thank you for those of you that could be a part of that. As we close for the evening in this session, in this season, we want to thank you again for joining us for the past hour and all year long. As Scenic, we are keenly excited each year for these Idea Jams. This is something that we started small and has grown so big, and we look forward to it every month, and we're excited already for what's coming up in the fall. We meet monthly and plan out how the season will go, and this is something we believe in, and we're glad you share our vision too. Who would have thought that you could actually enjoy looking forward to a Zoom meeting? So on behalf of all of us here at Scenic, we wish you a great remainder of the school year. For those in academia, the countdown's on, everybody. For everyone else, we wish you a good spring and a great launch into summer. And we hope everybody has a good summer, and we can't wait to be back again in the fall. Please keep an eye on your emails for updates from us. And again, thank you for being on our journey with us. Enjoy your summer, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight, and we look forward to seeing all of you in the fall. Good night.
And thank you, Stan, for hosting.
You're very
your
welcome.
And somebody should drop the Scenic website in for our visitor.
Yes,
timer.
I will
Great.
add that to the chat right now.
Great. Thank you again.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Now, it created a link. It created a link, of course, but that way, then you know what? Click on that. That'll open it up. And thank you for joining us from across the world.
That's great.
I can't seem to save the chat. How come?